Welcome to the MeasureU Podcast. Today I'm here with Josh Silverbauer. Now, if you've been following measurement at all, or if you've been online on LinkedIn or social media, or watch the intro videos on Measure Summit, or just like to have a fun time, maybe you go to conferences, you do whatever, you've probably come across Josh. I'm a big fan. Just because he's really a pattern interrupt in the entire world of measurement. He's actually having fun with it and having a good time. And so as we introduce some external guests to this podcast, we thought Josh would be a great first guest for us. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Josh come on and he's got a technique that he's been thinking about sharing and doing. And so, Josh, what are you thinking about right now? And how does that relate to our world here in measurement?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be talking a little bit today about custom definitions. What is a custom definition? Even that word conglomerate just sounds weird, right? But I'm sure if you have used Google Analytics 4 up to now, you know that the system, the platform is highly customizable, right? It is Google was kind of like, here you go, here's a box, and if you want anything else, you got to build it into a car, right? And so part of, the getting the value out of the platform and the tool is, customizing it to your business. And there's with Universal Analytics, was the primary platform analytics tool. They put a lot of thought into that platform, gave you that platform and said, here's all this stuff that you can use. It's probably good enough that you get 90% of the way there, and then maybe customize on a little 10%. And then, you'll have the goods. With GA4, they give you 20%, right? And then so you're left to, I always used to say, in metaphor terms, it's kind of like they send you a car in the mail in a box, and then you have to build the car, and then once you build the car, you have to learn how to drive stick shift, right? It's just very much a manual grunt process, but when you do, it can actually go faster than Universal Analytics, right? It has the capability to go to 90 miles per hour as opposed to 60 miles per hour, And so, there's a lot of value in understanding how to customize it. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the customizable features, specifically in the custom dimensions and definition section.
That is wonderful. So it's funny. I've been in the GA ecosystem for a long time, and I would go to the Google Analytics summits in Mountain View.
Yeah. And
back in the day with Universal, when Universal was controversial when it came out, nobody remembers that, but it was like, do we really need this? Blah, blah, blah. Let's, classic was what people wanted. But they actually stopped us in the hallway and said, how do you use Google Analytics? And so that interface, you just use it and they'd be like, okay. And they'd take notes. And that interface was the most loved interface. It was very intuitive. They iterated on it so much. It was beautiful. I think it was sort of a pain in the butt for them to maintain, things. But they even asked, do you use PDF reports? Do you export stuff? And it was really cool. But then when GA4 came out, it was like, let's just do basically mobile first and minimalist design.
Yeah.
And I resented it for a long time. But then I think I found the same silver lining that you did. And that is that you can customize it. You can get it to speak your language. And so if you're selling the benefits of GA4, I think you can position that as a benefit. It's also, I think you're giving a balanced perspective already. And I know your whole presentation is just going to share more on that. But it's also, this is the opportunity we have. We can actually take something and we can customize it for the first time. We can make it speak our language. And if you can get past that learning curve, you can do some hardcore analysis because it's more lightweight with the tracking and everything that you couldn't do before. And so I'm really curious to see how you can extend this and how you're using it, because we have our own version that we teach at MeasureU, but always looking for more perspectives and more insights as well. So love it.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to whip out 85,000 metaphors during this conversation because that's what I do. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. So I'm warning the audience out there that you're going to get, at least a few that suck. But, in terms of, getting a system to really work for you, Universal Analytics was called universal for a reason. It's kind of like the an Apple product in a way, right? Where you get it and it works for what you need it to do. If you're just sending email and you're sending, you have specific tools that work very well on an Apple system. But really, if you're building a whole extensive, development environment with servers and stuff, you're going to want like a Microsoft because you can customize it exactly to your business, right? Yeah. And so like that's kind of how the approach was, right? It was very much like you need somebody who's an expert now to be able to customize all of this stuff for you. But hopefully out of the lessons today, you'll start to learn at least some on your own that you can do to even just extend the value right away from the out of the box version to a slightly more customized version of GA4.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because I always say Universal Analytics was so forgiving, and that's how it got mass market share. Because if you screwed up, you could actually figure it out. Like if you didn't tag in UTM, you could probably create a filter or do something that would fix all your problems if it was broken. And then it's like, okay, we got rid of all the ways that we can fix things, and so we have to think ahead. And that really ruffled a lot of feathers to have to think ahead. But ultimately, it's been around for a while now, and that thinking ahead, you can start to see the benefits because it's all native in the interface. You can customize your reports, you can do all kinds of fun stuff from it. So I like the Apple product versus going more to like Android, right? Or something like that. Definitely.
I mean, oh my gosh, we have to set goals now. Like we have to like have an idea of what we want our analytics to be. I mean, that's kind of a good problem. It's like we want to be able, and that's, that's where a lot of this custom definition stuff is going to go, right? It's going to be in like, what do we care about? Right? What do we care about? And like, I might as well jump into the deck now because we're having this good conversation around, like starting from the beginning, right? Which is really the core principle of the customization, right? Is we need to understand what we want to measure, right? And if we understand what we want to measure, here is a tool to allow us to do this, right? So I will jump in to this deck. So I have a very short presentation for you guys, and we're going to just quickly talk about, the theory of custom definitions, what they are, why they're valuable. And then I'm going to jump in and actually show you guys, some tips and tricks and, that to get you a little bit further on your customization journey. And then we can talk a little bit about how Google Tag Manager or some of these other areas to customize it further to get more and more value out of it. So custom definition is a strange word that basically describes how you want to define something in GA4 that is not part of the existing parameters that GA4 gives you right away, right? I don't want to say the word out of the box yet because I don't want any spoilers, but out of the box, GA4 is pretty limited, right? Well, before I get into that, let's talk about who I am. I'm your leader of this discussion. I'm Josh Silverbauer. I am the head of analytics at CRO and CRO at FTF, all these acronyms. I work day to day with analytics architecture and conversion rate optimization and helping companies get more value out of their data. And I'm also the host of the Third Party Show, which is my own podcast, which is basically a variety show for the digital community. So definitely check that out. So what's the problem with the out-of-the-box GA4? Well, first of all, it's relatively lame. Right. You get a lot of these when GA4 was presented, they said, oh, we're just going to automatically track a whole bunch of things for you. And people were like, well, that's cool. That's helpful. We didn't get that in Universal Analytics. You weren't automatically tracking things. And people started going to all the possibilities in their head of like, oh, what can you track? You can track buttons. You can track all this stuff. And I don't have to lift a finger. Right. And then the reality of it was this functionality was actually not super useful, right? And the reason is because it lacks a lot of context. What they give you out of the box is, yes, they will track certain things like outbound clicks, or they'll track search, or they will track video views, right? These events that are occurring on your website, but they do not allow you to, they don't out of the box track the context around those things. So for instance, search, they will track that a search happens, but they will not tell you what was searched or where was searched, right? Those things, like what was searched, is actually something that you would have to create custom, right? Another example of that is video, right? They will say that a video was played, but they won't tell you what video or what the video link was or what, where the video exists, right? So there are these, additional parameters that you can build out of that are already there for you, but you have to establish them to allow them to be part of the context of your event, right? So, out of the box is relatively limited in terms of what good are those events that they're already tracking. And then further, part of GA4 in its functionality is that you can, build whatever events you want. And with whatever events you want to build, you can also send additional parameters and additional custom definition to custom dimensions, custom metrics that allow you to build a platform that is more specific to your business. And, obviously, having something that is catered towards your business is going to be way more valuable than just something that's telling you, just visits and visits and users, right? That having something that is, giving you if you are a, say you're a B2B website, being able to understand what forms are being filled out and if there's any type of rich data that you can get from that form. So like an industry or a revenue range, right? These are all things that could be potentially built as custom dimensions that will, customize the system a little bit more towards your business. So the solution is to make it yours, but make sure it's actually useful, right? This is an example of, something that is yours, but also functional, right? It's an oven mitt that has your face on it, which is everybody should have one. They're very, very valuable to have in your home. So yeah, I mean, again, you want to take a step back and you want to determine, obviously you can customize pretty much every type of data that's coming through into GA4, to make it more functional for you. But you want to make sure that what you're sending in is actually valuable. So for instance, I would not send every single click that exists into GA4, right? With, click text. I think that would just be insane amounts of data that you would have to sift through to actually get value out of, right? However, an outbound link click, which is actually already exists in GA4 called click, which I don't like because that's very confusing. But an outbound link click, for instance, where you're also sending what was clicked, and where it was clicked and what the URL was, could be very valuable to understand where are people leaving your site, right? And what are they clicking on when they leave your site, right? And so, having events and context around those events that are useful for you to understand what's happening on your website, and then also creating events that, like CTA clicks, where you can understand what people are clicking on that are, driving people further in your funnel, with, what CTA was clicked and potentially where on the page was it clicked, right? Those are useful. That is useful data for you to understand how your website is performing, right? And that is the type of data that you can customize and build. And then beyond that, you can create additional context around your users too, right? So if you have, for instance, an account login, right? And that account has certain information about that user. So for instance, a user ID or say you have an e-commerce site and you're storing how many purchases somebody has had, right? Or you're storing, the type of industry that user is in, right? All of that data, that contextual data, can be built into these this custom definition section to get more understanding on your users and value out of the data that's in GA4. So I did a little animation there, just foo, foo, foo. So there's 3 different types of custom definitions in the back end of the custom definitions part of GA4, and we'll take a look at the interface. There is custom dimensions, custom metrics, and calculated metrics. And within each one of these, there are different scopes, right? So, or different functionalities. So in custom definitions, custom dimensions, you have 3 different types of custom dimensions you can build: event, user, and item. And I'll walk through those as we get into the interface. Custom metrics is generally a number that you're sending in that would tie back to something that maybe a metric that's not already in GA4. And then a calculated metric is generally a function where you can take 2 separate metrics and then create something, a different metric based off of them, using some kind of formula. So a sum or divide or subtraction, you can have that functionality and build an additional metric out of it. All right, so let's dive in. I'm going to go into the actual interface. We're going to take a look at the section and what you could do and the different scopes and why you would do one versus the other. And then we will talk through a few different things that exist that are out of the box but not there yet. You have to establish them. And then we'll go into Google Tag Manager and talk about how you can build additional custom dimensions if you would like. So back end of GA4, probably most people are familiar with some of this, at least. To find your custom definition section, go into this data display and down to custom definitions. And here is your custom definition section. You have when in your interface, you can swap between custom dimensions, custom metrics, and calculated metrics. When you create a custom dimension, it gives you this pop-in screen, and the pop-in screen will ask you to name what you want your dimension to be, ask you what scope you want it to be, and then a description and the event parameter. Now, if I click this, you'll notice that there's already a bunch of existing custom or parameters in here, right? These oftentimes will relate back to certain events that are already happening on your website, right? That are there, that have parameters that are available, but won't show up with the event unless you establish it here, right? So remember we were talking about, for instance, video URL or video title, right? People watched a video and we would get this video play event. So for instance, we would see in our reports here, when we look at our events, we're going to see a bunch of different events. We see this like video start event, and you can see my beautiful amounts of data of people who are coming to my video third-party show website. But you can see that, two people started a video. And when I jump in here, I really don't have any information, right? I don't see what video was started. I don't see, the video title, the video URL. And so I don't really great. So 2 people actually watched the video, but I don't know what they're engaging with. And I don't have any additional context into, something that would be potentially useful for me. And so I can to, basically make that event richer, I can create a custom definition or a custom dimension here that is for any one of these video additional parameters, which are all available with the video events in GA4, but have not been established as custom dimensions out of the box for us. And therefore, they just don't show up in our GA4 interface, right? And, for us to take advantage of those and build additional context, we would actually just want to create them here, and we could choose whatever we thought was valuable to us to understand. So in this context, I would choose a video title, and if I create this video title here, and this would be an event scope. So there's 3 different types of scope. Event scope relates to the events that are occurring and are will show up with the actual event that occurs. User scope ties to the actual user itself, so it would tie to essentially that user profile and be available on the user level. And then item would tie to an item, so if you have custom item parameters, you would build an item parameter. This is an event parameter, so we're going to create this as an event scope. And when I save this, it is now available in my custom dimensions. And now, if this event were to occur again, we would be able to go back into our event section and see this parameter show up in the dashboard that is associated with our event. But not only that, but it becomes available in every single report and also explore in our interface, right? So now this is a parameter that we can use in lots of different ways, right? Which, obviously builds way more value to us than what we had before, which is just this event happened in this moment of time. It gives us context. Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff.
And this is all proactive, right? That's the biggest challenge that I think a lot of people have when they start using GA4 is that it can do a lot, but you have to think to do this.
Yes.
And it's proactive, meaning that it only is from the moment that Josh defines this that you'd get data.
Correct.
And with the way that the data takes a while to come in, it really can be frustrating for people to have to wait a day to see if it worked or not.
Yep.
And so I think that, not that we're going to get into debugging and stuff like that, but just let people know that you can absolutely do this, but you want to sort of do it yesterday or as soon as you can in order to get data. Otherwise it can be frustrating experience. But as Josh is showing you, once you have this in place, it's populated everywhere. Yep. And there's all this extra data that you need to have. So definitely it's like a measure twice, cut once thing where you need to plan a little bit more than you had to do back in the old universal days.
Yeah. And it's why now with every single client that we do any type of GA4 implementation for, or, any even ones that we build ourselves, a measurement plan with what events you are tracking and what parameters you want associated with those events is really, really important to have as an offline resource, as an off GA4 resource. And even if you establish everything up front and you have a good sense of okay, I want this and this and this and this, right? There is nothing in GA4 that tells you what parameters go with what events, right? And so if you're sending in, for instance, click text, right? You don't know if that click text is on this video click, right? Or on a button click or whatever other event that you are sending in, right? It's just not really specified unless you were to put it in a description in GA4 of every single event that's associated with, right? Which is not a great place to put it. It'll get pretty messy if you just try to do it all in the GA4 interface. It is really important to have some kind of spreadsheet that says, these are the events. This is the parameters that go with these events. And I will walk you up one step further. And that all trickles down from a measurement plan, right? And a measurement plan is, what is my business objective? What are my website goals that fit to those, business objectives? And then what are the KPIs that, we're trying to understand that relate back to those website goals, right? Once those are essentially established, all of the events that you're building should support that measurement plan, and the parameters that are within them should support the additional context for your events, right? So you're creating essentially a blueprint for GA4, which a lot of people really didn't think about when they had it, universal analytics. It was very much like, okay, yeah, we'll get the data, and we'll get the data, really all when we talked about this, it was around like goals, right?
Yep.
And oh, what do we want to add as a goal,
Yeah.
right? But this is like you have to kind of think about everything, because like you said, Jeff, it's like you can't go back really with this stuff, right? You have to, once you establish it, it's from that moment of time on.
Yeah. And if you're a service provider or you're doing this for clients or for your company, a few things to think. Josh just said that they have a template, and that's how you get paid the big bucks to implement this type of stuff. Is it's not so much the clicking the buttons and getting it installed. That's very important. It's really helping a company or your company with the strategy behind what you want to track. That does take a little bit longer to do up front, but it actually makes you get the result much faster because you did have a plan, and you're all the tracking you do. Josh is going to show us some tracking that's all done with a purpose. The other thing is just a quick plug for MeasureU. Inside of our community, we do have a template that helps you figure out these things, like what your measurement plan is. I'm sure Josh has a version of it that his clients can get. Maybe there's a freebie that you guys have too. But there are, using both our communities, using what we're talking about, and heck, using ChatGPT as a proxy. If you're not sure, using that as your co-pilot will get you there a lot faster than just trying to brainstorm things that you may or may not need.
Yep. Yeah. And you don't like, there's a piggyback on that, what Jeff was saying. You don't want to get lost in trying to do too much too, right? It's a balance. And that's why a good measurement plan or a template and measurement plan can really help you, because if you go out and you just start to try to figure out everything, like this could be trackable. Everything's trackable. Everything is trackable, right? Like that's part of the hard part of this, is that it's a balance between what is valuable and, like not having information overload, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or analysis paralysis, or all the fun ways to, talk about kind of having too much data that you don't know what you should do with it, right?
Yep.
And so it's, again, really hyper focusing on what does have value to you, right? If I were to, look at my third party show website, my goal is to get people to sign up for an email, newsletter there, or my goal is to get people to go over to YouTube and watch, right? So that's what I'm trying to understand and track, and everything that kind of relates to pushing people down the funnel to do that is important. Now, I don't pay attention to that website as much as I should, right? But if I did care, that's what I would want them to do. So,
awesome.
Cool. So again, there are a lot of existing parameters in here that all relate back to your, the things that are happening on your site already. Some of my favorites are, search term. I think that is one of the ones that I always, if there is a search on the website, one of the first things I do when I go into GA4 for the first time is look at, is search term being tracked, right? That's so much valuable potential information of what are people trying to find on your website that they might not be able to find, right? That is, talk about value. That is a significant amount of value that you're getting right from your users to understand what content they aren't finding potentially well, right? Or if you're an e-commerce site, what products are they looking for the most, right? So there's, definitely some out of the box custom definitions here that you can build that are already pretty useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go one step further and build your own. So, I mean, before we get into building our own, and I know we don't have too much time, so I don't want to like go crazy on it, but custom metrics is similar to custom definitions or custom dimensions, in that you can build an additional metric. So if you, for instance, have Like if you want to build, a time-based metric, or if you want to send downstream, a certain, your users, you're asking them about their height or whatever, and you want to store that, that answer. That's something that you could send downstream to this. And one example of this that I like to use is, I don't like the out of the box scroll metric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it only has like a 90% um, uh, event value. It's like whenever somebody gets down to 90%, that's when it triggers. So I build my own scroll, which has, an average of 25, 20, like 35, 50, 75, and 100. And then I build a custom metric that houses that data so that I can do an average, of like the scroll on every page, right? So, if you're just sending that into an event, it's harder to get an actual average out of it, right? You have to parse that data as a number and, do it that way. So this just gives you an easy way to create averages, and also like, house whatever type of number that you want, and to treat it like a number or a metric. And then calculated metrics, you can pretty much take, any metric that you want here, which, like when you click on this formula button, it will pull up all of the different metrics in your GA4, and you can create whatever you want. So if you wanted to, I always like to play around with this one and do metrics that no one would ever build. But like if you wanted to do like add to carts divided by your bounce rate, you could do that. Now you wouldn't, but you could, right? And that's, you can build, if there's any type of metric that you want to understand in here, that is, custom or a formula. So for instance, you want to create one thing that I think is pretty valuable is like a cart to checkout rate, right? You have a lot of conversion rate data in GA4 around like e-commerce purchase conversion rate, etc. But you don't really have a lot of the funnel conversion rates readily available, right? Like as you're driving people down a funnel, or if you have your own funnel that you've customized, right? This is a way that you can build funnel conversion rate steps, right? So add to carts to begin checkout, or, or begin, begin checkout to purchase, right? Checkout to purchase rate. So this can give you additional context in terms of your funnels and beyond, right? There's, limitless things that you can do in terms of, taking these different metric points and creating a formula out of them. Sweet. So just real quick, I want to go through what it looks like to maybe build your own.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump off that. So I'm just gonna go into Tag Manager real quick. I'm gonna share my screen. So in Google Tag Manager, and some of you might know how to do this already, and some of you might be learning this for the first time. So in Google Tag Manager, what really is helpful to build additional custom dimensions is the variable section. And you have a lot of built in, like right now, nothing is configured here, but if you click this configure, you'll see that there are a bunch of different built-in variables that can, on a specific event, if you want, you can send them downstream with a specific event, and that can be established as a custom dimension, right? So I'm just going to use the click elements as an example here, and I'm going to create a click trigger on all elements, just so that we start to see in our interface in Tag Assistant when I start clicking around the page. So let's say I click, oh, there's a beautiful Tim Wilson. Say I click on myself here, we should see my click. Yep. So if I were to, for instance, click on this element, and I were to look at the variables that I just created, you can see that I have click text and click URL now available to me, right, as a variable. And it's showing what I actually clicked. So if I were to want to, you know, basically grab this information and say I really cared about um, tagging this these cards here, so I can see what people are actually clicking on, right? When they're clicking on cards, and these are kind of randomized, so it would be helpful for me to understand. Are there certain games that people are more interested? So that would inform me, should I play these games more, right, on my show? And so I'm going to go and I'm going to take this little H3 element post title, and I'm going to create a tag, a GA4 tag. And in my GA4 tag, which I don't even have my measurement ID here, so give me a second to grab. So I'm going to go in and grab my measurement ID. That's good. Okay. And I'm going to call this card click. We'll say game card click. So this is the event that I'm going to send downstream, and I want additional context on that again. If I were to stop here, I would know that my game card was clicked, but I wouldn't know which one was clicked. And I want to know specifically which one was clicked, because that will help me determine which games I play more, right, on my show. So I'm going to create an additional event parameter, and this is what's going to get sent downstream to GA4, which will then become available in my GA4 custom parameters section. And once it starts sending data in, and once it starts happening, then I can actually find it in that little drop down that we looked at before and establish it as a custom dimension. So I'm going to add 2 different event parameters, and you can actually do this if you were going to be doing a lot of click events. You could actually establish a click parameter event settings variable, which could, you could just reuse over and over and over again. But because we're just doing one right now, I'm going to just put this, directly in. So I'm going to add this as click text. And Google Analytics likes the little snake case here, so we're going to stick to the little snake case. We're going to do click text, click URL, and I'm just going to take those variables and map them to these variables, which I saw here. So click text and click URL. And we're going to save this as a game card click. I'm going to create a quick trigger, and I hope I don't mess it up and you guys don't make fun of me, but let's see what happens. So this is on this click, and we're going to take the CSS element. Click element matches CSS selector. Oh, that's not it. Just grab this again. Okay. Oh, there. Yep. Cool. And we're going to call this element. This is going to be game card. Game card. Okay. We're going to save this and refresh, and hopefully what we'll see here is when I click this, if I didn't mess anything up, got that click, and you see that game click was fired, right? And then if I were to go to now my real time, in my real time overview, I should see in my events the game card click. And if I click into it, I have my click text and I have my click URL, and I can, drill down into that and see what values are being sent in there, right? And so now we're sending this downstream, and now I have the option to wait a few days, and it will show up in my custom parameters and grab that in my custom definitions here, and it will be available for me in a few days in here if people are actually clicking it. This is only gets populated when if there's actually data associated with it. So somebody would have to do this to trigger it for it to be there. Or I can just proactively know that I just created a parameter called click URL and just establish it now, so that when it does happen, it's already in the system, right? which I probably would do because I don't want to have to backtrack and miss some data. I want to proactively add it right now so that it's available once it starts actually capturing data. So that's, a real quick way of, how to build your own. I know we went really, really fast through it. But yeah, you can really do whatever you want here. And I hope that I communicated the reason why I wanted it, right? Which is the biggest part of it, right? Which is don't just track to track. Make sure you have a reason why. My reason why was that I wanted to understand the games that people were clicking so that I could play them more, right? That was my reason why. So always take a step back and think about what's your why before you actually build this type of stuff. But I wanted to make sure that you had the resources to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part, Josh, is like, why are you doing this thing? What's the outcome you're going to get from it? What questions are you going to answer?
Yep.
How is it going to make you better? And I think it's more than just this feature in Google Analytics. I think it's analytics in general.
Yeah.
It's just like, why do we even need this thing? Because I think that's my 80-20 always, is that really 20% of the things that you could track will actually give you 80% of the things you need. And that's the easy part. It's never been easier to figure out what you should track by using AI. Like like every episode of this show is going to be saying, can we use AI to answer the questions that are hard to answer or that we wouldn't be able to do on our own, to make up for maybe a lack of a ton of experience, or even you said, I went a little bit fast. Yeah, but also we can watch this over and over again, right?
Yeah.
This video, and also have a co-pilot next to you that helps you figure out the things that we saw. Like, how do you actually set that up?
Yeah.
Now, it used to be they had to do this in courses, but now you can just do it in addition with AI, and then using like our community, using Measure Slack, using all these different communities as a way to say, hey, did I get this thing right? Never been easier, but it'll always be difficult or challenging if you're not even sure what you want to track, or if you don't do that thought process. So I love how you're framing it up for people, and you're saying this is actually useful to track these things. And if you don't find it useful, then either you need to track something else, or you might be able to get by with the vanilla installation of GA4, right? You might not need all these things if you're not finding it useful, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a system that is for you to figure out what you're going to do with it, right? And that's with any analytics system. Like, GA4 is no different than any other analytics system, where it's about how you use it, right? Mm-hmm. A car's not going to go anywhere if you don't drive it, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you work with clients, and I'm guessing they're pretty high-end clients. Do they get excited about this stuff? Like, how long does it take for them to decide on what parameters they might want and functionality? And then are you including that in the reports you send to them, the dashboards and stuff like that? Are they like jazzed about it?
Oh, they're absolutely jazzed. I think, there's a lot of frustration with, like, oftentimes you come in and like it's the same story every time, where they don't feel empowered because they don't have data that supports the questions that they're interested in understanding, right? And the first part of any type of consultation is understanding those questions. What do they care about? What actually is valuable for them to understand from a business perspective? And that helps us establish, okay, these are the metrics that are going to answer those questions. These are the KPIs that are going to answer these questions. These are the dimensions we need to answer those questions. And then we say, we listened to you, right? It's like, we listened to you, and we came back and we have answers, the way to answer these questions. And then you build and you create and you customize, and no one's actually going into GA4 to get these answers. They're, we take them out and we put them in a dashboard, and we say, here's the answers to those questions. This is literally labeling the question, and here's the answer, right? So that they can understand and have that at their fingertips. But that's all based off of the architecture of how we're building the system. And then we're just visualizing it, but, it all starts from, what is the question, And so, that's often the most important part. And I think the part that oftentimes gets overlooked.
Yeah. I think that's such a key distinction for anybody who's looking at this. You might be like, well, I don't know if I want to set this up, or it might be a little bit intimidating. The idea here is answering business questions or questions about the thing that you're measuring, the thing that you're tracking, and there's no wrong answer, but the right answer is generally there's more right answers though, and it's usually what are you actually going to use, and that's freeing because and this is the sales pitch for GA4 over Universal. Universal told you what to measure, and you didn't really have much variation in it. And so if you weren't on board with it, you had to sort of deal with it because that's what they were telling you what was important. They said the bounce rate was important. They said that goals were important. Yeah. Now you're actually able to customize this thing to say these things are important. But then the other thing you said is Universal Analytics, the interface was key. Like it was such a good interface that we didn't think about going elsewhere. Yeah. Now you consume GA4 outside of GA4 more than you do in it. Yep. Like you're just in there setting it up, but you know, people are using BigQuery to export data. They have dashboards in Looker Studio. Those are the two of the primary ways to do it. Or it's BigQuery into a dashboard in Looker Studio, right? Yep. And that's how you're getting these answers and what you're looking for. And so it's really like a data. It's like your database now, as opposed to being your all-in-one interface. And that's challenging because like all-in-one as always sounds good, but very rarely is all-in-one best in class at everything. And so GA4 is actually really good as a data structure. Not the best in class data visualization thing, not the most intuitive thing anymore. But when you combine it together, you're getting way further. You're getting like what you'd have to pay $150,000 to Adobe for a year, right? Now you're getting it in a tool that can be done for cents on the dollar.
Sure. It's like, you know, you're going to get more value out of going on a vacation that you've built for yourself than, you know, somebody who set it up, you know, for you, right? It's like, you know, you're not settling, right? Mm-hmm. You're creating something that is going to have really a lasting impact on yourself, you know? Yeah. So.
Yeah. This is awesome. I love the demonstration and then also just sort of reining it into how people can use this and make it useful. I would say go through your site, see what you want to track. And there's a good chance that with this technique that Josh taught you, you can track it. And then maybe we'll have you on later on, or we'll have one of our other mentors on from MeasureU to talk about how do we visualize some of these things too? How do we turn this into dashboards? Because there's a lot of talk on that inside of our community. And I think that's really the where the rubber meets the road a little bit on that one. So thanks, Josh, for joining me. Is there any way that people can follow you? I know you mentioned your podcast, A Third Party Show. It's fantastic, everybody. Highly produced and really cool, very original. Lots of, I mean, just on your site, there's all these other cool things you're doing. I know you're at FTF or From the Future, as it was once called. Anything else? I know you put your LinkedIn on there. I'll make sure we put that into the notes on the video as well so that people can get to your LinkedIn. Anything else that we want to share with them? The only other thing that I can think of is just, you know, I created an analytics rock opera, and if you guys want to listen to something cool while you're working on analytics, look up Universal Sunset. That's what it's called. So awesome. We'll see if we can link out to that one as well. Cool. Sweet. Awesome, Josh. Thank you so much for being our first guest in this new format of the podcast. Thanks for being a MeasureU mentor. Absolutely. And thanks for being a breath of fresh air and a refreshing voice in this community, which can sometimes be boring. Yeah. But there's not a boring moment of being with you, Josh. So thank you so much. Thanks, and Jeff. We will see you all on the next episode. If you have any feedback for us, make sure you leave a comment on the channel. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.